At 10:47 p.m., a teenager lies quiet. The house has decided it is bedtime. The homework is finished. The lights are low, and sleep does not arrive. The easy diagnosis comes fast. Laziness. Attitude. Bad discipline. Some hidden screen glowing under the blanket. That explanation feels clean, because it hands the adult world a culprit. But the first reversal is colder. The teenager who cannot sleep at 10 p.m. may not be refusing night. Their body may not have entered night yet. This is where the evidence has to separate discipline, screens, and real circadian mechanics. Sleep timing, melatonin timing, sleep pressure, the 8 to 10 hours teenagers need, and what actually happened when schools push the morning bell later. The term is adolescent delayed circadian phase. Put more simply, the body's night may begin after the household's night. Two clocks are hanging on the same wall. The school clock is loud, squeal, and public. The biological clock is quiet, internal, and late. But stay with that clock for one more second. The first wound is not that the teenager is awake. It is that everyone in the room treats wakefulness as a confession. By morning, the private argument becomes public machinery. Alarms sound, buses leave, attendance is marked, and fluorescent classrooms receive the body as if wakefulness were a moral setting. The CDC says teenagers aged 13 to 18 need 8 to 10 hours of sleep per 24 hours. For context, that is not a luxury block added after life is finished. It is the maintenance window for attention, mood, and learning. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that middle and high school start no earlier than 8:30 a.m. Put more simply, pediatric medicine has already drawn a line on the clock. But the CDC found the average U.S. public middle and high school start time was 8:03 a.m. That sounds settled. It is not. So the question changes. If a body cannot realistically fall asleep early, yet must wake for an 8:03 system, the missing hours do not vanish. They are extracted. This is a factory whistle bolted onto a developing nervous system. Morning does not simply reveal whether a teenager has character. It reveals which clock was given legal authority. Puberty is usually treated as a visible renovation. Height changes, skin changes, appetite changes. The voice may move into a different register. But the quieter reconstruction is temporal. The body can begin to place night later. Sleep researchers describe this as a delayed circadian phase. Put more simply, the internal day has not disappeared. It has slid down the clock. So the hour adults call bedtime may arrive before the nervous system has received its strongest night signal. One marker for that signal is dim light melatonin onset. For context, this is not a teenager's opinion about whether sleep sounds appealing. It is a chemical timestamp, a measurable point when the body begins to announce biological night under low light. In adolescent sleep delay research associated with Mary Carskadon and colleagues, puberty is not treated as a personality flaw. The late hour is examined as part of a changing body, not just a household negotiation that went badly. Pause here for a moment. This is where the excuse story breaks down. The mechanism does not claim that every late night is inevitable. It does not erase choices, routines, screens, homework, or family structure. It only says the baseline may have shifted. That is a colder claim, and a more precise one. Another piece of the mechanism is sleep pressure regulation. Sleep pressure is not guilt, and it is not obedience. It is the body's accumulating demand for sleep. The physical weight that normally builds across the day and helps make the bed feel possible. In adolescence, that pressure can become harder to feel at the adult-approved hour. The key still works. The lock is not broken, but the opening time has been quietly moved later. That metaphor matters, because it separates biology from permission. A lock whose key still works, but whose opening time has shifted, does not open faster because someone stands beside it and insists. A teenager can be told to close their eyes, but instruction cannot force the chemical night to arrive on command. At this point, the argument has to leave the bedroom dispute and enter the body. The evidence is not in the teenager's apology. It is not in a diary entry saying, "I was tired." It lives in controlled sleep lab measures. The claim becomes harder to dismiss when the room, the light, and the timing are held still enough for the body to speak. One measure is dim light, melatonin onset in saliva or blood. This is not a mood, a preference, or a clever defense after missing the bus. It is a biological marker rising under controlled light, a chemical line where the body begins to write night into the bloodstream. That matters, because the dispute is usually moral before radiography is wrist-based sleep-wake measurement. A quiet recorder strapped to the wrist of the school day, registering movement through the night instead of asking a teenager to reconstruct the truth in the morning. Light sensors estimate exposure. They help separate sleep timing from the surrounding light environment, the way a record of weather helps explain why a road was slick, instead of blaming only the driver's memory. Then came the Seattle start time change in 2016 and 2017, shifting from 7:50 a.m. to 8:45 a.m., with about 34 minutes more sleep per night. And 34 minutes is not a lifestyle slogan. Across a 5-day school week, it adds up to nearly 3 extra hours of sleep, recovered from the morning schedule alone. That sounds small. It is not. The counterargument was simple. If the bell moved later, teenagers would just stay up later and waste the opening. But the wrist data refused to reduce the story to laziness. It showed a body using the shifted morning as biological space. When the bell moved, the body did not waste the gift. It slept. The biological evidence does not end at the laboratory door. once the delayed night has been measured, the question itself changes. It is no longer, why will this teenager not cooperate? It becomes, what happens when an institution places an attendance stamp on a moving biological tide? The AAP policy statement links early start times, insufficient sleep, adolescent health, and learning. Put more simply, the morning bell is not just a scheduling detail. It can become a pressure point, where the body's unfinished night meets grades, behavior reports, and adult suspicion. This does not require turning schools into villains. Early mornings are not evil conspiracies. They are old logistical machines, built for buses, workdays, sports, and adult convenience, pressing against a nervous system that is temporarily running late. And that kind of machine does not need hatred to do damage. It only needs repetition. Hold the moral verdict at arm's length. Minnesota District studies associated later starts with longer sleep, less daytime sleepiness, and fewer tardies and attendance problems. Translated into a hallway, this is what institutional language really sounds like. One lost hour becomes a face called lazy, a grade called careless, a first period silence called disrespect. So is the solution just to let every teenager sleep forever? No, that would only replace one simple story with another. Biology is not a legal pardon for every missed assignment, every late night choice, or every conflict at home. A shifted rhythm explains pressure. It does not erase responsibility. But responsibility becomes distorted when the clock is treated as morally neutral. Sleep deprivation is linked with mood symptoms, attention problems, risky behavior, and impaired learning. In plain household language, the exhausted brain is being asked to regulate emotion, absorb information, resist impulse, and appear respectful, all while running on a depleted physical budget. That is the social reversal. The school morning claims to measure readiness, yet it may also manufacture the signs of unreadiness. The student who looks blank gets read as indifferent. The student who arrives late gets read as defective. The student who fails to focus is judged as choosing disorder. And yet, the physical chain underneath stays cold and ordinary. A delayed biological night, not enough sleep, a fixed morning demand, and then consequences pinned on character. No single piece proves every conflict has the same root, but taken together, the pattern makes the old accusation harder to keep clean. The cruel part is not that society needs schedules. The cruel part is that the schedule learns to sound like morality. And now, the bedroom from the beginning looks different. The wakefulness at night was not simply a refusal, and the exhaustion in the morning was not simply a character flaw. They were two clocks talking over each other. One clock keeps time. The other keeps score. Adolescents need 8 to 10 hours of sleep. For context, that is not a generous cushion. It is the working budget the developing brain needs before it is asked to remember, regulate emotion, and look cooperative. Puberty can shift biological night later. Put more simply, the body moves the starting line, while the adult schedule keeps treating the old line as natural. Then school enters with a national average start time of 8:03. For context, that is the finish line being pulled forward before the delayed night has fully run its course. Later start evidence showed recovered sleep rather than simple delay. In household language, when the morning was moved, the extra time did not just vanish into idleness. Part of it came back as sleep. That sounds settled. It is not. This does not turn biology into an excuse, and it does not make schedules unnecessary. It only makes the arithmetic harder to moralize. The body asks for a long night. Puberty can move the beginning later. School can cut off the ending early. What looked like rebellion may have been a biological schedule being punished for arriving late to a world that never asked when night began. The teenager was not always refusing the social clock. Sometimes the social clock was refusing the teenager's developmental clock. The teenager was not always losing a battle against sleep. Sometimes the room was demanding morning from a body still inside night.